welcome to the show. I appreciate you tuning in for another brand new review. Don't forget, every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, I'm going to have a new opinion piece, a new interview, or some horror news for you to check out. And throughout the week, I'm still dropping countless reviews in the world of horror, whether it's movies, TV shows, games, books, whatever. You don't want to miss any of that, and the best way to stay on top of all the content I'm dropping is to get subscribed to my link tree. You can do that by going to linktr.ee/tscarymovie. If you get subscribed to my link tree, that's going to give you access to the YouTube page for the video versions of the show, your favorite podcasting platforms, the audio-only versions of the show, to my Letterboxd page for written reviews and movie rankings throughout the year, to my TikTok page for my short horror content, including movie news and movie premieres, to my Twitch page for my horror gaming, including The Thing Remastered and Phasmophobia for the PSVR 2, and my Fangoria shop page. You can enjoy my 20% discount off anything in the Fangoria shop, including a yearly subscription to the physical magazine. Take advantage of all that, y'all. Hit that subscribe button, as the more followers I get, more content I can put out for all of you. So, what are we talking about here tonight? Well, we have hit the month of December. We are not done with new films yet. There's still a lot more new films coming out this month that I still am trying to get to before I put together my end of year list. Usually I try to wrap things up like around this week or next week, but I still got a few more to get through. So it's going to be right at the end of the year when we get to the best of for 2024. But that doesn't change the fact that we are now in the holiday season. I'm headed back into holiday horror yet again, even with all the new stuff coming out, all the TV shows we got to cover here over the next few weeks as well too. And I've decided I'm going to try to hit a few that I have not had a chance to really explore on this show yet. So tonight, we are starting off holiday horror the right way by heading back to the Silent Night, Deadly Night franchise. I've talked about those first two entries here on this show before. I've dropped reviews for those, had a blast working through them, but quite honestly, I have not made my way through the rest of this franchise. I saw the reboot that came out a few years ago with Jamie King in it that I thought was really, really strong, but I have never seen the third, the fourth, the fifth. There might be a sixth film in there, but at least there's a 3 and a 4, right? But I've never seen any of the rest of those. And again, I've always been told these films actually get more outlandish and actually a lot more enjoyable as you get later on into the franchise. And so, what better way to start off our holiday horror season than with my first film of December? Tonight, folks, I am talking Silent Night, Deadly Night 3. Better watch out. Let's not waste any time though and jump right on into things. If you haven't seen the trailer for Silent Night, Deadly Night 3 yet, this tells the story of Laura, who is a blind clairvoyant with the ability to see into the past and specifically see the deeds of the Santa Claus Killer, Ricky Caldwell. Now, you might remember from the previous film, Ricky Caldwell was the younger brother of the previous Santa Claus Killer, Billy Chapman, who went on a rampage after seeing their parents killed one day on a visit back from their grandfather's house by a psychotic Santa Claus. Billy went on his own rampage in the first film. Ricky, retelling basically the first film, and the second one went on his own rampage. And now here in part 3, the clairvoyant Laura begins to have visions of Ricky's rampage, and unfortunately is the key to resurrecting Ricky from his long coma that he's been sleeping. But with Ricky now awake and in hot pursuit of Laura, can our heroine survive another holiday? And there it is, folks. That is Silent Night, Deadly Night 3. Better watch out. Now, if you've heard me talk about these previous films on this show here before, folks, these have been really, really fun Christmas themed slashers. You know, the first movie is I think one of the better slashers that we've ever received, honestly. And I laugh about it because it is kind of just a humorous situation way it's set up to where, again, these two siblings see their parents murdered by this psychotic Santa Claus. And of course, that trauma stays with them throughout their lives. So when Billy grows up, that's when he has his psychotic break and decides he will become like this Santa Claus and seek out killing anybody who's on Santa's naughty list, is the best way to put that. The second movie I've talked about, where I actually enjoyed that a little bit more because it made the first movie irrelevant. You didn't need to see it anymore because the second film, half the runtime are flashbacks from that first film. Like, it's ridiculous to the point of like recapping everything that you need to know, but we're just gonna show you the whole thing. It's a strong decision. I have to stand behind it because I love the first movie so much, but ever since seeing that second one, it's hard to justify going back and watching it when it's like, well, I can get two for the price of one by watching part two. So with part three, honestly, I didn't really know what to expect out of it, just because, again, Ricky is left alive by the end of the second film. Like, there's a little teaser showing that he is clearly still alive and ready to return for another rampage. But I think given the way that the story pivoted from 1 to 2, that most would probably expect that there be a sharp pivot from 2 to 3 as well. And quite honestly, there isn't. We do continue Ricky's story as told through the eyes of our new heroine, Laura, but it's not really the sharp twist that you might have expected that we get. Now, don't get me wrong. The film does keep its outlandish nature that the first two Silent Night, Deadly Night films definitely had. If you see Ricky has this new brain helmet that shows his very much exposed brain and is keeping him alive from the damage that he suffered towards the end of Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2. Now, that itself is obviously trying to take the film over the top with its depiction of its killer, and that's great. Like, there's nothing wrong with that at all, because it's not like this series has ever been that sensible. So sure, if you want to go outlandish in that route, I'm on board with that. The downside, though, is that the same trick of these flashbacks isn't really going to work a second time around. You know, from the first to the second film, we understood that we lost Billy, we had to introduce a new villain, and it was a way of reacclimating viewers to the story of the Silent Night, Deadly Night series and still introduce something new. With this third film, you do have to question whether or not like a direct-to-video entry really needs to be worried about like educating folks on what's come in the franchise before. No, part 3 here doesn't do what the second film did and dedicate a good chunk of its runtime to flashbacks, but that doesn't change the fact that the flashbacks from these first two films do still play a significant role here in this story, because Ricky is not up and moving for a good chunk of the film. A lot of this, again, is just being told through our heroine Laura, and we don't really get to see Ricky in action until, you know, much later on in the film. And because of that, the flashbacks kind of stand out just a little bit more, because there isn't really a connection between Laura, her brother, her grandmother, her brother's new girlfriend. There's not really any kind of connection that they have to Ricky or to Billy or to these murders at all. It's just the fact that Laura has the ability to see the past of the Santa Claus Killer, and that's about it. And I'm not saying there needs to be any kind of familiar tie or anything. It's not like Laura needed to be discovered to be Ricky and Billy's long lost cousin or anything like that. I don't need something that over the top here. But the flip of this, though, is that if we're not going to get the draw to the franchise, which from the first two films is Billy and Ricky, if we're not going to really get that much exposure here until later on in the film, you got to do something just a bit more interesting than with your lead character. And I don't know if Laura, again, this blind clairvoyant who has the ability to see Ricky's past crimes, I don't know if that plot I thought was interesting enough to keep things like really cool and keep me invested while we're waiting for Ricky to wake back up. That's just me, though. Ricky this time is actually played by horror royalty Bill Moseley. And the interesting thing about this is that Bill Moseley actually looks a little bit like Ryan Brian Wilson, who played Billy Chapman in the original Silent Night, Deadly Night. Like, I might be the only one who thinks that, but when I saw him, I think a lot of folks might come to the conclusion like, all right, well, he doesn't, like, Bill Moseley doesn't look like Eric Freeman, though, that much. And that I agree, is that he doesn't really resemble Eric Freeman, in my opinion, but he does resemble our actor who played Billy Chapman in the first film. So I don't know if that was done purposely or not, or maybe it's just a happy coincidence, and maybe I'm crazy and I just see that and nobody else feels the same way, but I entirely feel that there's some resemblance there, and therefore it didn't stick out like a sore thumb like I think some people might when recasting gets done, which isn't uncommon for horror flicks. Like horror sequels all the time will recast actors who aren't going to come back to do these same kind of roles over again. And considering Ricky's role that he had in Silent Night, Deadly Night 2 versus what's happening here in Better Watch Out, I can understand it's the case of you read the script and it's like, this is not what I was doing before. Like the gravitas is not there for this character, you know, if you want to say the character had one, and therefore might not be a choice to come back. But I'm never going to be mad about seeing Bill Moseley pop up in another revered horror franchise, honestly. None of that just because Bill Moseley has this great screen presence. You know, we got this very big grandstanding, scheming, smarter than everybody else, Ricky Caldwell, Ricky Chapman, whatever you want to call him, back in the second film already. I don't know if we necessarily needed that again for the third film. And Ricky does spend most of this runtime, even when he's up and moving, not talking or saying anything, not really showing much in the way of emotion besides, again, being annoyed, being triggered, being set off by the mentioning or sight of anything Christmas related. I don't know if we necessarily needed more than that here for this specific movie, because it's not the same role for Ricky that we had in the previous film. And to that aspect, again, Bill Moseley does amazing with the role, because it's a very mute role and just got to walk around like a lumbering villain. Like Ricky in this case is very much turned into a Michael Myers, into a Jason Voorhees. And that's very, very different from the Ricky we see in the previous film, which is very more akin, if you want to take a killer's page out, more of a Freddy Krueger in the second film there. So Moseley does good with the role. I'd be remiss to not mention as well that our heroine Laura, who's played by Samantha Scully, mentioned that her brother Chris, played by Eric DeRay, has a girlfriend. This girlfriend is played by Laura Herring. That's right, Mulholland Drive Laura Herring, which again, everybody starts in horror. This was her very first film role, and I kept looking the entire time, I was like, why do I know her? She looks so familiar. And by the end of the film, I worked out exactly who that was, but it kept catching me like she looks really familiar, but I just can't place it, and it's Laura Herring. So again, a little bit more of showing that everybody loves to do horror in the early stages of their career, and she went back to it, so more points to her for that for sure. Silent Night, Deadly Night 3. Look, it is, I would say, not as brutal as like the previous two films. I think that those first two movies very much focused on showing you the deaths as they're happening, showing you the violence as it's taking place. And a lot of what we see here in part 3 are camera angles that cut away, aren't focused on it. We see the aftermath of it there. And so there is still a lot of blood and gore for sure here in Better Watch Out. But the flip of that, though, is that you're not going to get the overt violence that we got in those first two films. Might make it a little bit more easily accessible for those of y'all who want to take a step back from what we got in those. There is no garbage day happening around this film this time around here. Story-wise, again, I would say that the story itself is definitely weaker than what was presented across the combined story of those first two films. But are you going into these films looking for a strong story? Because I don't feel that's been the strong point of this franchise. It's its over-the-top nature while giving you a killer who is incensed by anything Christmas related, and that's really where you're gonna find like the enjoyment here of this. So Silent Night, Deadly Night 3 is not reinventing the wheel for this franchise in any means at all, but you still get a little bit more of what you've come for in those previous two films, even if our killer this time around is not wearing that Santa suit. Regardless, you can check this one out for yourself right now on Tubi. It is free for y'all to check out. Go ahead and watch this one. Let me know in the comment section what you think. Right now, like, do you prefer the connected story of Ricky and Billy across these first 3 films, or do you fall in the back half when we get away from the Chapman Caldwell story? Let me know in the comment section here, folks, and hit that subscribe button, as I still got some great stuff coming up for you here in the month of December, including my can't miss interview with author Tim Wagner coming up this Wednesday, y'all, December 4th, followed by my review of his novelization of X. So don't miss any of that, folks. Hit that subscribe button. I appreciate you tuning in. My name is T. We've been talking scary movies. Stay scared.